Hi, my name is Candice Hammons, and I currently live in Peoria, Arizona. And I was born and raised in Inkster, Michigan. My mother is Tony Hammons, my father, James Hammons, and my ancestors, which I came from my mother's side, Tony Hammons, are the Arnwine family.
Hi, yes, I'm Neftala Ellis. I reside in Canton, Michigan. My mother is Cheryl Ellis. My father is Jesse Ellis. My mother is related to the Arnwines. Gracie was my mom's second great grandmother, which she's my third great grandmother. And that's how I'm related to the Arnwine.
Okay, so how did you all go about finding out about your great grandfather? Someone could. Who was the researcher that found all this information?
That would be me.
And
Yes, I took the Ancestry DNA test in 2018. I always wanted to know my mother's side of the family, where they came from, which I knew a little bit, but they really didn't talk about it much. So I took it upon myself to, do Ancestry, which you can find all the census records, all kind of things that you never, knew that was there to be found. So once I took the DNA test, I just started digging, into her side of the family, which was my grandmother, her father on the Ragsdale. He was a Ragsdale because my second great grandmother, Elizabeth Arnwine, married Romeo Ragsdale. So that's how he became a Ragsdale. And then come to find out his mother was Elizabeth Arnwine, which is Gracie's daughter and Albertus's daughter. So then I start seeing more information from Sterling Arnwine, which he did a slave narrative telling the story of what happened to them. They were in a will to receive 900 acres of land in Jacksonville, Texas, that they never received until this, current day. And also, that they did come, Gracie came from Memphis, Tennessee. And that's where Albertus Arnwine purchased her. So he purchased her, when he was in Tennessee, and then they eventually moved to Jacksonville. And along the way, they picked up Winnie and Mary, which were her sisters. So that, she wanted to make sure that they, were with her and to be, free. So, it was so many different things that I found, the connection of all this information, and I love the story that Sterling told about, that, because we would have probably never knew a lot of this information. Doing Ancestry and technology nowadays does allow you to see things that you would have never known. So it was really interesting. So let's see here, for 6 years strong, I've been going off into it. I've been doing interviews, television, newspapers, petitions, and all kind of different things for support.
And so how are you feeling about all of this, Neftala?
oh yes, I was so excited when Candice told me about it. And then I started looking into it as well. And Candice really started, we're so grateful for her for really finding our family, our roots, and finding the story about our great great grandmother. I mean, it's amazing how she was such a strong woman to try to fight for her family, to leave land for her descendants. And that's a blessing to know that she thought about the future, which she knew, she wouldn't be here, but she thought about us. And it's such a blessing. And I'm so grateful for Candice, we're close cousins. We're first cousins. And it's just a blessing that she found out all this. Because everybody's excited, like our mothers, and, we're meeting new family members and people that we never knew. And if she wouldn't have dug deep into the story, we wouldn't have never knew this. So it's amazing. It really is.
So you spoke about your mother's family. This is your for you, it's your mother's side of the family.
Yes.
Okay. So your mom is still with us, possibly?
Yeah, she's still with us. Yes.
Okay. And so if you go back from your mother to your grandmother, going back to great, what is it that your mother has shared with you about what she remembers about family?
She remembers like when they were younger, they used to go to Texas every summer for break. Her mother and her siblings, and she would tell me about the stories of how like the dirt was so red and everybody was just so nice, and they used to have a ball with granddad. So she really loved going to Texas. She said we really had fun growing up. So she had really always nice things to say, and she had a good family.
And
Yeah.
so this land that was left for your family is in Florida?
No, it's in
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, Texas.
Jacksonville, Texas. Okay, because there's a couple of Jacksonvilles, so we want to
Yeah, it's a Jacksonville. Yeah,
the
yeah, it's in
Florida,
Jacksonville,
there's two others,
Texas.
several. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so your family originates from Texas?
They originated from Louisiana, and then they moved to Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And how long do you Candice, do you have the history of them being in Louisiana before moving that way?
Oh, wow. With Louisiana, it was most of my grandmother's, her childhood until she went to college. 'Cause
Right.
she went to Wiley College in
In
Texas.
Texas.
So yeah, she was born and raised in Louisiana. Then, like when she went to college, that's when she went to Texas. And I think that's where grandma met my my great grandfather, Frank Ragsdale, which is Gracie's grandson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to make sure people can follow the story. So the story actually, we're going to say, begins with you, Candice, in that you did a lot of the research.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you shared that with your family.
Yes.
You went back.
Yes.
How many generations back is it to Sterling?
For Sterling, he's my third cousin. He would have been my third cousin. So I want to say, let's see. Well, his mother was actually
Gracie.
my second great aunt.
Okay.
Yeah, so it went back.
Okay. Yeah, so people can kind of follow that story, because you were talking about your direct line, but it's kind of off just as a tad because it's your cousin. It's a cousin. Okay.
Yes,
Right.
Now, can you tell us about the story that is in your book, a little bit about his story?
Oh, Sterling's story. Well, he was born up under, the slave owner Albertus Arnwine, which was my third great grandfather and his, grandfather. And so basically, my third great grandmother, Gracie Arnwine, she slept in the house. And, Sterling and the rest of the slaves, they slept outside. I think they had grass and, how they then had to sleep outside outdoors. And so he basically, I think he was a baby at the time too, as well. So, or young, maybe 8 years old. I'm sorry, not a baby, like 8 or 9, if I want to say that age range. And so he basically, was up under Albertus until he died. And then after he died, they separated all of them. And so he went to another slave owner. But, he was fairly young, when he was living up under Albertus.
That was his father?
No, that was his grandfather.
Grandfather. Okay. So Sterling is biracial?
No, well, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, he is. Yes,
Okay.
Sterling and Anna, because she's mulatto. Then they called them mulattoes.
Mulattoes, right? Okay.
Yeah, mulattoes.
Okay. So he was the product of your great grandmother and the slave owner.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Through the Library of Congress, which I found also on Ancestry, and then you could even Google it as well. the slave narrative that he did in regards to what happened to them and how he lived, and basically his whole story until the day they did the interview with him with the Federal Voters Project in 1936. And he told, his whole little story about how he got his first pair of jeans. I think towards the end, they said they called them Red Rippers, which was really, comical because, back then that was so long ago, you could just imagine, sometimes I just think back, I try to think back to how they actually lived, and he said the jeans burned him so bad, that was his first pair of jeans. And, another thing that stood out, when he say his mammy came, he said, how they talked. She came from Memphis, Tennessee, and then they moved to Jacksonville. And he talked about his dad, Ike Lane. He didn't know his father, as he said, in the slave narrative, but he knew his dad, his father's name. And oh gosh, it's just so many different things. It's like so much to take in, with the story. It's just so amazing.
Yes. So, Neftala, in you taking in the story, what's your perception of who this gentleman was, who Sterling was, and what did you feel about the story when you read it from the Library of Congress?
Sterling was he was a good person, is what you could tell. He was a really good person and had love for his family. And you could tell that they were treated good from just, what he said. He loved his slave owner, was really good to him. He loved spending time with them. And so that made me feel good that, that they weren't mistreated.
Mm-hmm.
So he let that be known, they weren't mistreated. And he also said that he remembered at 91 years old, he remembered that he had land that was owed to him. He never forgot that, because Gracie made sure he listened to everyone talking, being a kid, and that stayed in his head, that he remembered that they had land, that everybody had a piece of land. And he said that in the narrative story.
Mm-hmm.
That was just something that he never, ever forgot. Because, kids listened to everything back then. They were, listening to everybody talk, knew what was going on, but they would never say anything. They just keep it in. So
yeah,
Sterling was
I thought that was real interesting that he thought, if I could just go to court, but I don't have money.
But
and
that was,
would he win? Would he win if he went even?
Right. And they couldn't go to court then. So yeah, if he could go, that was just amazing. It really was.
So where is your family at this point in seeking reparations and or going down to Jacksonville to maybe bring this story to light, that maybe your family is due this property?
Yes, that's in the process. That's what we're working on. We are definitely working on that right now, and we have a lot of support, especially with the newspaper articles and the news coverage. And we have our petition that we have people signing. We're getting, a nice amount of support from that. So we're actually right now, that's in our process of trying to, and we do want to visit. We want to all go there to see the action, and be able to walk on the land that our ancestors walked on. That's going to be really, really special, really special.
Mm-hmm.
In the shadow of the Christmas tree that still stands in the home of Candice Hammons, the Peoria woman spends a lot of her time looking at her family tree these days.
For me, it was more so finding out my mother's side of the family.
In 2018, Hammons did a DNA test through Ancestry.com. The results shocked her.
That's Albertus, Gracie, Romeo, Elizabeth.
At the top, Hammons' third great-grandfather, Albertus Arnwine, and third great-grandmother, Gracie.
She was his slave. He was the slave owner. So they had, I want to say, 6 to 8 children together.
That led to the discovery of dozens of family members.
Taking a DNA test was the best thing that we could have done.
We spoke with Candice's cousin Neftala, who lives in Michigan, on the phone.
Oh, I was so happy. I'm like, oh my God, we have family, that we've never met.
But Hammons didn't stop there. Instead, diving deeper into her family's past, finding an old cousin's oral testimony and other documents. She says her third great-grandfather left her family around 900 acres of land in East Texas in his will that is now Lake Jacksonville, that Hammons says they never got.
It was just so much to take in. It was more so shock because it's like this was my family.
Getting together long-lost family members of different races from across the country.
My tree is pretty huge.
They're now working to get land they feel is theirs.
It's not even about like monetary thing or anything. It's just for honor, just to have them honor our ancestors and just to let the world know that they're not forgotten.
It is very powerful. I've actually had that opportunity with my family to go back where my family lived as slaves. So I know it's a very
very emotional. It's going to be very emotional.
It's very powerful and very emotional.
Yes.
But it's good to know that there was a story that he was not mistreated. Which is a good, that helps a lot.
Yes, that makes you feel really good that that they weren't beaten or, because so many others were. And thank God that they were blessed to have someone that really loved them sincerely. Yeah. So that's the best part of that too.
So the property that's in Texas at this time, have you all done a Google Maps search? Is it prime property, and where is it in the country still, or is it someplace that might be worth a whole lot more than it would have been worth had he received that land and had to sell it or something?
Right. Well, as of now, I know for sure that it's Lake Jacksonville. A lot of the land is underwater, and the surrounding community is a part of the land as well. So it's a housing community in Lake Jacksonville. So a lot of it is underwater. So that, it's because it was 900 and something acres. I want to say 920 acres. So a lot of it, they end up building the lake, so it's Lake Jacksonville, and then the housing community that surrounds it. Mm-hmm.
So any petitions, if you don't get the land, to petition for a possible change of the name of the lake?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we thought about that too.
We're pursuing the lake name change to our.
Yeah, that would be, if you don't get the land and you can possibly change it, what an honor that would be to honor your family in some way. Still provide you with that great heritage and that legacy for your family.
Yeah.
Would they allow a marker on the land if that doesn't happen, a historical marker of some sort?
That's what we're looking to do as well. We're looking to get a monument, like a historical monument with all their names, and also to get them proper burials, because a lot of them that don't have proper burials. And, things like that, and, get an acknowledgement proclamation from the city of Jacksonville, Texas, and, an apology. So a lot of different things that we're looking into, a community center, just a different things we would like to see in honor of them.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned proper burial. Are there family burial grounds as well on that property?
Yes, we have a cemetery in Jacksonville. It's called the Ragsdale Cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that just your family cemetery, or was it the cemetery for enslaved people or Black people during that time?
Well, it is our family's. It is our family's cemetery, but they did for the other slaves as well to be buried there. Yes.
Yeah, I know that there is a project through the Preservation and Trust, United States Preservation and Trust, that they are working on cemeteries right now. That are still there, that were for enslaved people and or following the Civil War, where there were Black cemeteries. So the
Mhm.
Preservation and Trust program, they have a big program. Like it's the young people who are, I don't want to say at some HBCU, but they were just here in Tucson talking about it, not that specifically, but they did bring that up. So I know that
Oh,
that's, yeah. So if you get to that point, let me know and I'll try to dig that information back up for you.
thank
Oh,
you.
okay.
Appreciate
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else you all would like to add about your family and how everyone is feeling about this and the joy and excitement of finding all this wonderful information about your ancestor?
Oh God, everybody is so excited. You know what? Because
Yeah.
I think I think thinking about 168 years and no one, I guess, how sometimes people just talk and but like they're really excited to see somebody in the family actually pursuing to really get our history, our story to be told and to be known. And how they have those untold Black historical stories.
Mhm.
And I said, I think this is very important, especially when, Sterling did that slave narrative, that just brought tears to my eyes and knowing what happened to them and far as that aspect. And so I said, you know what, I think this should be more than just sitting here. I think
Yeah.
this needs
Yeah.
to be, known and told and, justice should be served for what happened to them, as far as that.
Yes.
Yeah, with for
So
their
I,
land wrongfully taken from them, and they
Oh,
didn't, and they couldn't fight for their land because they weren't allowed to at that time.
exactly. Yeah. And I could tell that's exactly what he wanted to do was to
Yeah,
take them to court or do something. He actually knew though he would have to
yeah,
go to court, which
yeah. He had,
shows
yeah,
that maybe he may not have been highly educated, but he
yeah,
certainly
but
was smart enough to
enough
know
to
there's a
know.
process
Yes,
to making sure all this works. So yeah,
right.
that was really impressive. I know I read, just so you know, I did read it.
yeah,
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for the book. I really appreciate it. It brings so much to light about,
Mhm.
how there can be a positive outcome. It's not always the sad story of, like you were saying, Neftala, where people were mistreated horribly.
yeah,
If you've been to the
yeah.
National Museum, there's that one picture of that one slave and his whole back is just,
Was just torn
it's
apart.
just torn
Yeah,
apart. You could, I mean, it was just
Mhm.
unbelievable that someone would beat someone like that.
like that, right?
Yeah, take the anger out.
Yeah.